Hi boys and girls. So in today's math work, you're reviewing the information that we've practiced last week with classifying 2D figures. And so remembering that 2D figures are two-dimensional, so they're flat. They have a length, they have a width, but they don't have a height. If they had a height, that would make them a 3D figure. So one of the ways that you have been thinking about classifying figures is thinking about their lines. And so you could remember that if a shape has two lines that run next to each other that will never cross, we call those parallel lines. So I can classify shapes putting them together, saying that they have parallel lines. Here's another set of parallel lines in this figure, so I can look for those. Another thing that I can look for are lines that form a T or a right angle, and so we call those lines perpendicular. And so perpendicular lines do cross. They create a T, they create a right angle. They must create a right angle to be perpendicular. So these lines right here cross, but they don't make a T or a 90-degree angle, so they would just be intersecting. They are not perpendicular lines. You can see in this shape, if I was thinking, I could say this shape has perpendicular lines, this shape has parallel lines, but I could also say that this shape has a pair of perpendicular lines as well as a pair of parallel lines right here. Another thing that I can look at when I am classifying shapes is I can think about the angles that I'm finding. So if I look up here to this figure, I have a really big open angle right here, and so this angle right here would be greater than 90 degrees, so that would be obtuse. So I could sort this shape. I could say that this shape goes with figures that have parallel lines and obtuse angles. It also has right here a little angle that is smaller than 90 degrees, and so I would call that an acute angle. So I could sort this shape in lots of different ways. I could say it has obtuse and acute angles and parallel lines. If I look over to here, I could say this shape could be sorted because it has a set of parallel lines right here. I could say it has a set of perpendicular lines, and I could also right here, it has a right angle. So I could sort it by that. Looking at triangles, I can sort triangles thinking about their sides, or I can sort triangles thinking about their angles. So right here in this triangle, I can see that this triangle has a right angle. So that would make that a right triangle. So I could label that right triangle. So thinking about the right triangle and jumping over here to this triangle, you could see that this triangle does not have any right angles. So I would call all these angles are smaller than 90 degrees. So I would call this an acute triangle. Now, since all of these little lines right here are telling you that each of these sides is equal in length, so that is telling me that I can also call this an equilateral triangle. So there's some little hints that they give us when we're working with figures, thinking about the little box that tells me I have a right angle, thinking about the little lines that are telling me that the sides are equal. If I jump over here to this triangle, you can see that it's telling me that two of the sides are the same. So this one we call an isosceles triangle. And down here in this triangle, you can see that there are no lines indicating that any of the sides are equal in length. And I specifically drew it so that those sides would not be equal in length. And so this is what we call a scalene triangle. So in today's work, you're going to be looking at some different shapes, and what I want you to be thinking about is what you have learned about parallel and perpendicular lines, and what you have learned about acute, obtuse, and right angles. And then the most tricky that you'll probably be thinking about is the types of triangles. Those are probably the most tricky to remember. Equilateral has the word equal in it, so that is a little hint for us. And then we have the isosceles and the scalene. So when you're working today, you're going to be looking at your angles, looking at your lines, seeing what figures have that I can use to help classify them, and thinking about, are there two shapes that have similar characteristics that I could put in the same groups.